What is going on, Dominators? Rico Garcia here with another amazing episode. Today we are going to be joined by Chris and Brandon over at Floodlight Consulting, and our topic, our subject matter here today is going to be an interesting one, which is going to be what we call the midlife thing. I'm doing a little air quotes here for those of you that are just simply listening, and really it's just about the mindset and the emotional aspects of entrepreneurs that are going through their midlife thing. They're going through changes on how they look at business, how they look at their lives, how they're going to break through to new levels, and what really matters to them, and how this reflects on not only company culture, how it reflects when it comes down to growing your company, getting to that next level, having peace of mind, having emotional peace, and really feeling fulfilled as an entrepreneur. I think that a lot of us as business owners, we get into business because we want to have freedom. We want to feel that we're contributing in some way, but we never wanted to clock in and out, right? We wanted to have this freedom for ourselves. And I think that a lot of us look at this from the standpoint of, I'm going to become a business owner now. Life is going to be peachy keen. Like everything is just going to be beautiful. And what ends up happening is that there's this disbalancing that ends up happening in the world of business. And you end up spending a lot more time on things that maybe aren't moving the needle for you. They're not satisfying you. You're not finding gratification in the same places. And a lot of individuals call this a midlife crisis. Some of us look at this and say, okay, well, what does this really mean? What is my mind and my body telling us? And today what we're going to be discussing is a lot of this subject matter and then how this relates to your business. It's a very interesting topic. Maybe you're going through something like this, or maybe you know someone that's going through scenarios like this that we're going to be talking about in the show. But either way, I think that the awareness is something that we should all take notice of and see for ourselves. Hey, how am I looking at business nowadays as opposed to how I was 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago? And do I need to reevaluate what I'm going to do moving forward? And our friends at Floodlight have some great insights. And I think that this is going to be a show that you're really going to enjoy. So without further ado, let's jump into the show.
Welcome to the Restoration Domination Podcast, where you learn actionable advice that moves the needle and helps service-based businesses dominate. Here's your host, Rico Garcia Jr.
All right, Dominators, what is going on? Buckle up. I think we're going to have an amazing conversation today, especially if you are a male entrepreneur, hovering in their late 30s, 50s, early 50s, somewhere around there. I think this is going to be 40s. This is going to be fun. Awesome. So again, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. Are you ready to help us dominate?
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah, baby.
Awesome. Cool. Do me a favor, fill in some of the gaps on the intro for those few in the restoration arena that may not be familiar with the name. Just let us know exactly who you are and what you do.
Yeah. Well, we're the Floodlight Consulting Group. Brandon and I, we have a growing team of consultants that specialize in restoration companies. We help them with all the primary areas of their business, helping them grow, helping them, I think, realize their vision and the goals that they have for their business. And then we also host the Head, Heart, and Boots podcast. It's kind of our passion project and a place where we share our ideas and have a lot of fun.
Yeah, I think that's that part of our kind of like personality and offering that's not necessarily always instructional, right? That's like our platform. We get to kind of get below the surface and really start to talk to people about the entire restorer, more of that human element, not just the best practice of our zone.
That's awesome. And for those dominators out there that haven't checked out the show, I'm actually going to go ahead and drop a link in the video description as well as in the show notes to their show. Go ahead and show them some love. They got some amazing guests. They have some amazing tactics that you can go ahead and walk away from after listening to the show. So make sure that you definitely check that out and show them some love on that end. Let's talk about, so off camera, full disclosure, so that way everybody kind of gets context as to how we're going to dive into this. This is going to be a slightly different episode, I feel, but we're going to tie it all into business and mindset and what I think helps entrepreneurs be successful. So off camera, recently we were just talking about what happened to my sister. For those that have been following along on LinkedIn, maybe you're aware of this. Recently, my younger sister, who happens to be 8 years younger than I, had a stroke. Totally changed the way, the future of her life. Will never be the same ever again. And she's the mother of a young child, and obviously she was working. Well, now that's not a possibility. There's a lot of dynamics that happen with this, and I was mentioning to them the status on how she was, and how that affected me personally. Just knowing that she's 8 years younger than me, and just like what that's done to my psyche. And what was it that you mentioned? Like, how am I handling the what?
Oh, the midlife thing.
Yeah.
The midlife thing. Yeah. So I'm 42.
We didn't go right into crisis. We went.
Yeah, we didn't do it. We didn't go there, and we're actually really glad that you didn't, right? Because I think that word crisis, I think most people understand it as like a midlife crisis. That's typically the term that's used, and I think that a lot of men, in particular, once they hit a certain age, they feel psychological changes, and they may feel physical changes in some cases as well. But then immediately they're like, oh, wait, this has got to be that midlife, and then insert word crisis, which is horrible, right? Just talk about starting from the glass half empty type of thing, right? Yeah. But we were talking about the overall, psyche, and how that changes, and how, at a certain age, you start to really change the outlook on life, on how you spend your time, who you're spending your time with. The value of money also is a big scenario. And also just identity. Like how you identify and how you want to be identified to the general public. Talk to us about that. Let's kind of start unpacking this stuff, because you guys obviously consult, some very, very successful restoration contractors, and you help them not only in their financial growth, but there's a lot of psychology that goes into being a really good coach.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're dealing with exactly that. So give me some ideas. Let me know what your thoughts are on this midlife thing, and how that affects performance. Does it make people better with age, or, are there certain hurdles that they're going to have to overcome?
Yeah.
Well, so I have so many thoughts, man. I'm so glad we ended up going this direction, because I think, I don't know if it's a 40s thing, maybe it's 30s for some people. It starts to set in, and later in life for some folks, but I really relate to what you're saying. I have a younger sister as well. And so it's interesting as your siblings become adults, and, they have their own lives. I don't know. I just relate to what you're talking about. Fortunately, my sister hasn't experienced, what yours did, but I understand the connection to your own mortality, right? And your own vulnerability, I think for me, it started a couple of years ago. I'll just share just a very quick little backdrop, because I think another thing you're hitting on that we're not talking about directly is we're just people, right? Mm-hmm. So how does this thing midlife affect our leadership and all that kind of stuff? Well, it affects it in every single way. It's like, I think what Brandon and I've learned about ourselves, and we see this all the time with owners, is we try to segment our lives. A lot of us carry a persona at work that's fundamentally different than what we bring or we offer our children and our spouse, our friends at home. Like that distance can really grow, because for a whole variety of reasons. We're posing. We feel like we have an image we have to maintain as an owner of a restoration company, or a GM, or whatever our role is that we identify with that, my title, my role, my success. But then we have this whole other kind of experience and persona, and the way others experience us outside of work might look really different. And I think at the end of the day, part of the task in becoming a leader or being our best version of ourselves is integrating those two things. Like, I am one person. Whether I like it or not, I can put all this effort and energy into who I am as a business owner. But ultimately, if that's not integrated with who I am at home, right, I may end up with a lot of money and a lot of status, and yet all of my personal relationships that bring all the value in my life are broken or fractured, or are atrophied. I've been putting all of my energy and effort and and sustenance into my business and my professional life. And then I have nothing to enjoy outside of it. I'm driving my fancy car back from the office and I'm going back home to a broken marriage or whatever. So anyways, I just think it's all integrated. For me, this whole mortality thing, and it's driving everything in my life right now. I mean, it's really causing me to relook at everything. A year and a half, 2 years ago, I found out I've got a congenital heart defect called bicuspid aortic valve. It's something my mom has, something my uncle has. And my mom had been bugging me. I love you, Mom, but she was like, are you going to get tested? Are you going to get tested to see if you have this genetic defect? And there was, first of all, up until a couple of years ago, I never even thought about death. I'm 43. It's just like, I'm a healthy person like you. I mean, I've been going to the gym and like, I care about that stuff a lot, and I have for many years. So I'm fit, I'm healthy. I just had never even thought about anything that might shorten my life or like anything that's out of my control. You know what I mean? And I finally went and I got an ultrasound, and sure enough, got that the bicuspid aortic valve thing. And in a moment, when I got the yes from my doctor that, yeah, you are positive for this, something flipped in me. And maybe it's similar to this experience you had with your sister, where it's like all of a sudden things became real to you of like, okay, I'm how old now? And this happened to my sister who's much younger. Oh my God, what does this mean for me? And I really spun out for a while, just thinking about death. And it just so happens my uncle had a heart attack around my age, and he has that condition. The two are totally unrelated. Bicuspid aortic valve does not contribute to heart attacks or anything like that.
But nonetheless, in your mind, you're like, hey, wait a second.
You know?
Right.
So I'm spinning, my wife's an operating room nurse, my mom's a nurse, and so I have all this healthcare people around me. But, you know, like many health conditions, and maybe you're even encountering some of this with your sister, they just don't know. They don't know what the heck causes most of this stuff. And so in terms of preventing it, I just have gone through this stage over the last year or so, just processing, what does this mean? And what do I feel about this? But I'll tell you what, I am so much more present now. I've learned a lot more about my condition, by the way. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon, guys. But nonetheless, I have become so much more in touch with my mortality and what I really value and what I derive pleasure from in my life and what brings bliss and joy and makes it all worth it, right? I am so much more in touch with that on a daily basis. I sit in my sauna at night, and what do I think about? Well, a lot of times I'm thinking about how many more of these days I have.
Right.
I'm just more in touch with that, not because it is brief or because of my condition. Something could happen, I'm going to die. Yeah, none of that. It's just I'm aware of it now in a way that I never have been, and that affects everything. It affects how Brandon and I are building the business. We talk about this. I think we both have similar feelings, but just caused by different conditions in our life. You know, things that are causing us to be more aware of this. But yeah, what you talked about, like money. It's like how it's always this dance. I think for most entrepreneurs, if they think about what really matters in their life, there's always this dance of, how much do I want to invest into this thing for what it's going to get me? And what is it getting me? Is it just more money? 'Cause I'm getting to the point in my life where I could give a shit about just more money. Like I got enough. I'm really lucky. I'm really fortunate. Like our life is, all my basic needs are provided for. So how much am I going to give of myself and my life, to get this other thing, whatever it is, right? Status, another layer of income, more wealth. I'm like, what do I want? You know, I'm thinking so much more critically about that. That's my midlife thing. It's just everything is a calculus. What am I going to put out versus what am I going to get back? You know?
Right. Yeah, no, 100%. And just that, because I don't want the thought to slip my mind, you were talking about these different personas that a lot of people have, and how they have this persona when they're at work, and then they have this other persona when they're at the house. I've had this discussion quite a few times as to why I believe alcoholism and the like, or any addictions, are so prevalent. And I think that part of that is, you put on the shirt and tie, put on the nice blazer, you jump in your car, and then from the moment, you walk into the office, it's very robotic. It's like, hi, Bobby. Hi, Susie. How are you today? Let's look at these numbers. And you're this person all day. It's not the real you. It's a version of you, a synthesized version of you. You never have an opportunity to let your guard down and just be real and authentic. So by the time you get home, you're like, I don't even know how to act anymore. You got to find yourself in the bottom of a bottle. By the way, full disclosure, I'm not that guy. Like, I'm not like drinking myself to the bottom of the bottle. And if I am, it's because it's Friday night in Miami and I'm having a damn good time. But like, I'm not the type of guy to drink my sorrows away, but I've seen it. And part of this is there's a lot going on there. You've got this persona on all day, and then you're not unifying that. You're not consolidating it. And I think in a lot of cases, a lot of individuals start to have these midlife thoughts, but they don't know how to connect it and say, hey, wait, how do I disconnect from this persona? Because it's a hard thing to do, right? Like, you guys speak with a certain cadence. You wake up tomorrow and you're like, you know what? This cadence doesn't suit me anymore. I want to try something different. The first thing that's going to happen is like, hey, why are you speaking weird today? Hey, why are you wearing a shirt and tie today? Like, hey, why are you doing this different? Right? So now all of a sudden you got like this society almost kind of like pushing back on who you are or their version of who they want you to be because they've accepted you that way. And I just think that's a really interesting dynamic on how that affects the psyche.
Yeah, I think the reality of it for us in a lot of ways is that that's really at play. And not saying that our business is so much different than somebody else's, but like you, a big part of what we do is a public persona, meaning that's just the place that we exchange information with our spheres, right? Mm-hmm. And so because of that, there's just some stories, there's perceptions that people create in their own mind that at times are totally in alignment with what our mission is and what our hope is. But at times too, it's just their story. It's their perspective guided by their past experiences. And when they look in on us, what we do, how we do it, they're going to create that persona almost for us. And so there's this element of Chris and I at times being fearful of, as we continue to pursue alignment and call it between our states, right? Our personal lives, family lives, or professional lives. Our job is to continue to make those as close to the same. That's really the hope, mature in a healthy way. But man, we still get very fearful about that. Like I still get really nervous about providing more clarity or more a perspective on how I feel about like my own personal relationships, about how I feel about employee relationships, those kinds of things, because I'm kind of in that zone all the time of I just want to be me and speak the truth as I see it, because I feel like that's a healthy alignment with integrity and me being who I am and maturing. And yet I'm afraid sometimes that if I say exactly what I feel, that there's going to be that judgment. There's going to be those people that close that door, close themselves off from hearing our message. And that does bother me, right? It bothers me professionally. It bothers me, my ego. It bothers me because I don't want to be misunderstood, like, all those other things. But I think ultimately kind of what you're touching on, what Chris is saying is, I think there's this opportunity when you begin getting in this midlife space is a crisis comes from a wacky, aggressive movement of the pendulum from where we're at to these, and we chase opposite instead of chasing balance. Right. And I think when people are in a midlife space and it's not a crisis, it just looks more like us saying, hey, let's take inventory of the first half of the trip and let's make sure we're being a little bit more intentional and strategic about the next half of it, right? Like it's just a matter of just finding more and more balance between the what do I really want to be and where have I been? And I think a crisis legitimately, you just shit can everything and go to the opposite side of the spectrum. And that's where you see the guys, going out and getting the crazy sports cars and struggling in their marriage and all the things, right? It's just like,
well, and I think that's part of it. Let me give you my perspective on the, exotics and all of the really nice things. I think that there's, for a lot of men, first of all, if you're thinking about it, if you are the offshoot guy who's listening to the show and is thinking about it and hasn't pulled the trigger because people think that you're having a midlife crisis or whatever it is that you call it, dude, just go out and do it, because odds are is you've worked your ass off. You deserve it. You need to feel good about you. My personal opinion about that is a lot of people just haven't pulled that trigger because of the responsibilities in their life. And they felt that, hey, instead of jumping $150, 200K on a car, that's my kid's education. That's buying them shoes. That's making sure that they're taken care of. And in a lot of ways, we, especially as leaders, right, you kind of put yourself last and everybody eats first, right? Yeah. So I think that that's an interesting dynamic. One of the things that I'm interested in getting your perspective on, and by the way, I love the fact that we're having this conversation because I believe that there are not enough, the entrepreneurial space as a general whole, if you are a man or a woman in business, but in this case, we're really talking about men. If you are a man in business, it is a very, very lonely place to be, because typically you're nose to the grindstone. You're working, people are relying on you. You've got your business, you've got all of these things, but then you're still a human being. You're still a person. You still have emotions. You still have perspectives. You still are affected by certain things. And typically by the time you're done with your daily responsibilities, you are just whacked out. You're tired. You just want to go to bed, wake up the next day, and it's go time again. And a lot of high octave entrepreneurs really don't have a whole lot of people around them. They don't have a nice circle of like-minded men that are in similar financial situations, that they could speak to candidly and be like, hey man, like, what are you going through? So there's a small part of me that is hoping through this podcast, through this particular episode, that, maybe you're a guy in a truck and you're just, you're listening to the show. First of all, thank you so much. Appreciate you. And you're probably having some of these thoughts, and there's a hope that maybe, by having this conversation, you could be like, oh, okay, cool. I'm not alone in this world. Lots of other men feel this exact same way. And kind of, we can uncover a few things and maybe giving you a few solutions on how you can get connected with like-minded people. So question here now would be, how do you see this in your coaching? How do you see this manifest in a person's business? And more importantly, on like how they are either A, growing the business, or B, how they're shrinking the business back. And in my experience, I've normally found that it kind of falls in one of those two categories. They are either A, they feel that they're behind the 8 ball and they need to go pedal to the metal and they want to build the next huge thing, or they're okay financially. They're happy. They're in a good place, but they're not happy enough because it's taking too much of their time. What's been you guys' experience on that?
Well, I think there's another question kind of buried in there that's important. And that question is why. I think all owners need to ask themselves, why am I doing this? Like, what is really going on here in me? And again, it kind of comes back to my comments earlier about what is it just money? Because I think it's not for most people. And God, probably 10 years ago, I had this, my wife and I were going through some like marital counseling. Like we were part of this group and we were all going through this book and we had this whole process. We were going, it was very good. It was transformational for us. Mm-hmm. At the time we'd been married 10 or 11 years, and God, marriage is hard, right? And we were trying to do it well, and we were struggling. And so we went through this. And one of the patterns I noticed in myself is just how business for me was a massive source of affirmation. So at the time I was a State Farm agent. I had billboards all over my market. I was out there. I was putting on events, and I was kind of regarded locally as kind of the State Farm agent. I was very public. I was very involved in a lot of different things. And what I ultimately realized is I had made my business was a massive source of identity for me, but it was deeper than that. It was more than just me seeing myself as a successful business guy, business owner, community leader, person. It was actually deeper and a little more sinister in the sense that I got really good at getting other people's affirmation. I had all these points of affirmation as a State Farm agent. Within my peer group, I was one of the better or one of the top guys. So I was constantly getting affirmations from corporate, other agents. Hey, can we come and stop in your office and shadow you for, and like that kind of, it's like, oh man, I must be awesome, Yeah. But of course I'm crafting. These people only know about
what you want them to see,
what I let them see. Right. I was able to craft this image, and we all do this to some degree. Right. Mm-hmm. So I had all these points of affirmation. Clients, I do a big community event. They're like, oh, you're so great, Chris. These cool events that you do. And hey, I saw your billboard as I was driving into work. I'm like, yeah, me and my good looking family. Like, it was just, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's the whole Instagram social media thing. I had these points of affirmation. And here's the interesting thing I'm getting to. One of the things I learned about myself, and I'm still feel like I'm trying to manage or live accordingly, is I would come home at the end of the day to my family, my wife in particular. And I had all day people tell me, oh, Chris, you're great. You're awesome. But there was this realization inside of me that those people only know what I've given them, what I've shared with them. My wife, on the other hand, she knows the whole story. She knows who I am. She knows me better than anybody else in the world. Right. So I come home after a quote, hard day at work. And if she doesn't respond to me, care for me, engage with me in the way that I'm hoping she will, whether it be affection, just agreement, us, whatever, right? All of a sudden, then there's this fracture in the universe, right? Where it's like, oh, I'm not everything that people have cracked me up to be, right? So there's a huge ego break there, right? So I go to my work. My work provides me all kinds of this points of affirmation. I'm making money. People are telling me I'm awesome. It's my source. And I go home to the people that really know me, and yeah, all I've got there is the harsh reality of I'm not everything I'm cracked up to be by all the people I work with and my clients and everything else. And so that kicks off this kind of negative pattern, right? And so we talk about how we have this way we present ourselves to the people that we work with, and you come home, it's like, yeah, you're not the shit, Chris.
Right.
I mean, let's be serious. I could use a little more domestic support around here. I'd really love to be a little more engaged with the kids, a little more tuned in when you're at home. Yeah, it'd be really great if you gave me the version that you give everybody else.
Right.
And then, of course, that makes me angry, right? Then I feel insecure. I feel small, like everything I do is not enough. And there's this, right? There's this breakdown between who I really am in this sort of area and how my family experiences me versus all the energy and effort I put out to cultivate this other reality at work.
Right.
So all of that to say, I think as I've talked with other business owners and talked with our clients, I think that's a really common dynamic people experience. Right? Is that the business becomes like their source of life, the money, the cool cars that they can buy from that, all of that, those become points of affirmation. And if we're not cultivating that thing over in the rest of our life, like if it isn't all just one thing, we end up over indexing on our professional life and what people think of us and our reputation and everything else. And that just becomes the whole purpose is identity and everything else. And then we start making decisions out of that. And then we have more and more disconnection with the relationships, the things that really bring us love and joy and value. And our instinct is just to keep cranking that lever over here on business, just the dope hits of, right. Oh, we grew by 25% again this year. And, oh, I just hired 5 more people. I just bought another location. And we just keep going to that for our source. And I think we end up somewhere that we thought it'd be different. We thought somehow that just adding more and more of that stuff would produce joy and happiness. And I think most of us, we get into that 40s range and we're like, wait, this recipe, I don't know if this recipe is going to produce what I'm actually wanting. Right. And so we do. So back to your original question is like, what does this look like with clients and our executive coaching? Well, it sounds a whole lot like this. It's like we do spend a fair amount of time tactical stuff with our clients, and certainly there's a lot of that, and there's the strategic vision planning and all that stuff. But from time to time, we get below the surface with folks because we'll see a presenting problem, and Brandon and I just know from our own selves, oh, okay, there's something going on here, and we go beneath the waterline and we start exploring that with clients. And for a lot of them, nobody's ever asked them to think on that level. Nobody's ever really talked about this stuff. I don't think we talk enough about this stuff, right?
Yeah, we certainly don't. Right. Yeah. I think there's a stigma around it, right? Yeah. Especially if you're winning. Oh, yeah. No one's, because here's the reality. Like, no one's asking you. Yeah. Like, as a man, you see, you see your wife, you see your girlfriend, you see, a female, and you can see that something's off. Like, we'll be like, hey, is everything okay? How you feeling? Yeah. As a male entrepreneur, you rarely get that. Because you got to put your game face on. You got to put your big face on, big old smile, and go out there, shake hands, kiss babies and everything else. But that, again, is you have to ask the question of, why is my business winning so well, but then everything else is getting beat down? Because
100%,
like, where are you lying? Because there's a lie somewhere that you're telling yourself. You're either lying to 8 hours a day, 9 hours a day, however many hours you work, and you're putting on this amazing face and everything is dynamic and everything is great. You're either lying to all those people, and in turn that's what's making you successful, great, don't change that, right? But then you're going home and you're just like this cantankerous, just moody individual, and that's naturally like, what is it, your homeostasis, like that's your baseline. Okay, well then maybe you need to bring in a little bit more of that pizzazz that you use in the business world, and some of that romance from the business world, and implement some of that with the wife, with the kids, and while you're at home, right? If you're going to a meeting and you're not in the mood for a meeting at work, but somehow you still put on a big smile and you go through your pitch and you do your thing, kids get home from school, you should kind of be able to fake that aspect of it too, right? At least create through the physical aspect of doing, change the mental state that you've been accustomed to. What's your take?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think we perform at work and then we go home, and under the basis of, well, they know me for real. This is home. This is safe. Right. We just drop the kit at the right. Mm-hmm. We almost move into that home environment and treat it as our place to draw from instead of lead and feed into. And so it's really easy, I think, for professionals to look at their businesses and identify with, I've got to be this role. I've got to lead. I need to help guide, coach, mentor, right? All these leadership roles that we carry. And then we go home and it's like, well, this is family. They know, they're good. They understand. They know I'm building the business. They know I'm doing X, Y, Z. And we kind of just, for all intents and purposes, shit on them. Right. Mm-hmm. At minimum, we're just giving them straight up the leftover. And I can see how that happens. Like I think that I think part of what you wrestle with there, Rico, is that at work, as much as Chris and I for sure believe that the strength of our businesses are built on the kinds of relationships build with our people in our businesses, which that's probably a whole nother show. Yeah. But still though, because of assets and team resources and people's personalities and hiring people with certain strengths to offset our weaknesses, you can do a lot to be successful and not necessarily invest a ton of time and energy in your personal internal growth. Mm-hmm. However, leading at home requires a lot more. You can't hire that out. There's no mitigation department manager with a strength and details that you can put onto your roster, right, to help balance your weaknesses. So when you go home, you're actually forced to do uncomfortable work in areas that are not easy to invest in. Mm-hmm. So think of it this way, like in my professional environment, and a consultant comes to me and talks to me about how I manage my financials and what I do to create a really strong whip process to manage my live body of work. I get it. I can buy into that. I can sit under the tutelage of somebody and learn that, put it into practice, assign it, delegate it, win-win, check the box. But when we talk about stuff at home, like this reference that Chris made to his family, kind of like, dude, we love you, but you're not exactly the superstar that you've painted the picture of. Well, then it's ego. Then it's this emotional context that I have to do fucking work at as a leader. And that's a hard grind. Like it's the element, like when we're coaching people and their culture and their organization's totally dog crap. Like the part that we have to fix is their behavior. It's their persona. It's how they carry themselves, not necessarily the tactics. And I think that's what makes work at home so hard. Like we have to do internal work. We have to look at some stuff that's fairly ugly. We might have to adapt and work through emotions. Like there's all this stuff. And quite honestly, that's harder than getting good at work. Like it just is harder. And then if we go grind 60, 80 hours a week as this self-proclaimed awesome entrepreneur, then there's zero gas in the tank to go home and start working on your leadership development and your relational development required.
Yeah.
It almost makes it impossible to, right?
Yeah, totally. Well, and of course there's this other like element in the room too, where all of your people at work, I mean, presuming you're an owner, right? But even true, it's like leadership levels down line, like your employees, you're paying them.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
They're paid to respond in a particular way to you. And if you're good at what you do, right, there's a certain amount of credibility or respect they give you because of what you do. Like you're good at sales, or wow, Brandon's really strategic. What a great leader. Like you have credibility based on what you do. And you go home, my kids don't give a shit how
strategic.
Awesome. Well, because you're not surrounded by yes men. That's part of the issue.
Yeah. There's an aspect to that, right? And so my family is not looking to me for how great of a salesperson I am, or that we have a podcast with so many views, or that our clients are growing by this because we're so rad. Like they don't care about that. And so it forces me to invest in those relationships just for the sake of relationship, right? It forces me to like think about how am I caring for, and I think what's interesting here is I think sometimes you can become very successful monetarily in the size and scale of your company simply by doing certain tactical and strategic things right. This is the big confusing aspect I think about life, is that you can achieve a certain amount of security, material wealth and possession and reputation and everything else, and have a lot of dysfunction and unhappiness present in your life. And this is what we're talking about. And it begs the question for me. It's like, well, okay, if I start to tune into this stuff, like I start to think more about what we're talking about here, about how I'm bringing myself home to my family and how I'm nurturing those relationships, they don't have anything that they can do for me. Like a lot of times my people, apart from just the relational, like the companionship and that kind of stuff, like my family isn't going to produce revenue for me. They're not going to give me more profits. They're not going to get the word out and get more Google reviews for me. They don't have anything to offer me. I'm just investing in that relationship. I think as we start to focus more on that, one byproduct as a leader is we start to become more tuned into our people as people just like us.
Right.
We start to see our folks less as, and I know we never articulate this out loud. Like most of us just aren't the kind of asshole that's like everybody's a unit and a number to us. I mean, I think your typical business owner, that's not, they don't think about their people in that kind of objectifying way, but we do subconsciously.
Yeah.
You know, I think,
I would go a step
like,
further. I would say that most people do. This is where I'm the contrarian on these topics, just because I have enough locker room talk with real high octave entrepreneurs, and I know what they really say, and it's like they are a unit.
No, you're right. You're right.
They will never say that in public, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But what's interesting about your perspective is that, in fact, even if they don't, if they've bought into their own BS of not looking at it that way, in the subconscious mind, they have this financial number attached to it. It's where it is a unit. But if you can go ahead and make that switch internally, and now you're looking at your units now subconsciously to people consciously, that's a game changer.
Yeah, I think it really is. I think it really is, because then, I think what's on offer for owners and leaders, like why would they care? Why should they even give a shit about what we're talking about? Why should they stay in the pocket here with us? I think it is. I think it's a force multiplier. I think at the end of the day, right, the more we see people as people and we start investing in people as other people that have dreams, hopes, ambitions, fears, anxieties, just like us, when we start to be able to see people more holistically like that versus sort of strategically just looking at their roles,
Right.
which I think is I think none of us want to act that way towards people. Like what you say is true. Yes. Do we talk tactically and strategically at the bar and over drinks about, we tend to objectify people in those kind of conversations. Totally true. But I think the more we can move out of that and we start to see people as individuals that are just like ourselves, that's the key piece.
Yep.
Is that our people, they may make less money than us. They may be less skilled. They may have less education. They may have less experience, less entrepreneurial drive. They may be different than us. But at the end of the day, they still feel and think and have hopes and fears and dreams just like we do. I think the more we see people in that context, and we start treating them as such, we start to create that alignment between what we're trying to do in the rest of our life, and it becomes one life. Instead of, I've got my business owner hat on here, and this does certain things for me, and then I come home and I do that whole, husband, dad thing. Instead, it's like, well, what kind of person do I want to be? And I've seen examples over and over again, and Brandon has too. We see it in our clients. It is the force multiplier, because everyone is drawn to that kind of person. There is something about that integrated personality that people want to be a part of and they want to follow. Because at the end of the day, we all want to be known. We want to be valued for who we are beyond just what we do. Right. And that's a lot of times where us as leaders stop. Our recognition, everything is tuned to how well our employees do for us. Mm-hmm. And we never kind of get to that point where that person just feels valued and accepted and cared for as a human. And that's not a science. I think there's a lot of ways to get there based on the personality of the leader and so forth, how we convey that and how we be that. But I think it starts by us just having this moment of reflection, like what we're doing now is just thinking about, how do I move through the world? How is it others probably experience me? What would my wife and my kids in an unguarded moment say about their experience with me versus say my department heads or the people I work alongside every day? You know what I mean? And start to close that gap.
Yeah, exactly. And I think those are beautiful points. And my next question would be, where do you strike that balance? Because again, you're not most people I think are not going to be looking for balance until they start asking some of these questions. And they're like, wait, am I off balance, right? Am I, investing way too much time, energy, effort, and money, some of my best personality? Do I have decision fatigue? Do I have putting on smile fatigue, because of everything that I'm doing at work? So where is that balance, and how are you helping people identify this in their business as to, hey, you need to double down, you need to work more, or hey, you need to go ahead and have these strategic things in place so that maybe you can take a step back and you're not taking a financial hit, but now you could be that better version of yourself for your family, for your friends, and more importantly, just for you. But before you answer that, let's take a quick moment to thank our sponsor. Dominators, let's face it, your company will make it or break it on the backs of your estimating team. But if we're honest here for a second, what tools have you actually given them to succeed? The Actionable Profile is the newest tool inside of your estimator's toolbox, or at the very least, it should be. The Actionable Xactimate Profile is a data-driven solution that provides real-time estimating guidance on the fly. It checks for both overages, omissions in your estimates in real time, leading your team to having much more accurate scopes each and every single time that they're writing an estimate. Avoid any kind of potential conflicts with the adjuster and ensure that your estimates include every single warranted line item with the Actionable Xactimate Profile. Get your free demo today. If you head on over to value.getinsights.org/dominate, we've got an amazing offer for you. Again, head on over to value.getinsights.org/dominate and get your free demo today. Hey, Dominators, most owners with an agent marketer hope that they're getting a return on their investment, but really have no idea how many referrals they're actually getting from individual agencies. You see, agent marketers are not sales professionals. Jerry Edel is a specialist at referral revenue from insurance agents. He started back in the 70s as a restoration technician, and 34 years later ended up as the national sales trainer for one of the largest restoration franchise companies here in the US. And for the past 16 years, he's helped restorers succeed at creating long-term referral revenue from insurance agents. Agent marketers are in-person advertisers. Agent sales professionals are job generators when they actually have a strategy. Who do you have working for you? Do they have the tools that they need to capture the market share that's available to you? This is what I want you to do. I want you to talk to Jerry. Click the link to schedule a free call. Up-level your profitability today. Hey, Dominator, did you know that it takes about 45 days for most contractors to get paid on emergency service jobs? And some contractors report much longer wait times than that. Either way, it's a long time, especially when you start adding in all of the stress that you have to do to keep up with payroll, overhead costs, and everything that goes along with just running a business. Well, One Claim Solutions is an insurance billing specialist that not only gets their clients paid in 32 days on average, but it also improves their profitability. And above and beyond that, it also handles all of the communications with the adjusters. One Claim Solutions was actually founded back in 2016. And since then, they've been able to process hundreds of millions of dollars in insurance invoices on behalf of their clients. Listen, you deserve to work with a specialist that has well-trained attorneys as well as staff. And also they have proprietary purpose-built technology with some really rigorous time-proven processes that's needed to deliver a best-in-class insurance billing experience. One Claim Solutions will handle it all so that you can focus on really what matters most, which is running your business. Head on over to oneclaimsolution.com/dominate. Again, that's oneclaimsolution.com/dominate. Book your free consultation today. Hey, Dominators, did you know that about 80% of businesses are actually unsellable? This is why you need to let Restoration Brokers of America work with you to ensure that you maximize the value of your business when you decide that it's time for a change. All you have to do is visit sellmyrestorationbusiness.com for more information. You've worked hard to build it. Now let RBA work hard to sell it. Are you tired of managing salespeople? And let's be honest, I mean, sometimes you even really feel like you know what you're doing when it comes down to managing a sales team. And this is where Wylander comes in. With over 40 years of sales management experience, they can do it for you. And the best part is they can do it for a fraction of the cost of hiring a full-time sales manager. So listen, do yourself a favor. Call Wylander today and see what a difference a real sales manager can do for your company. All right, Dominators, we're back. So we had left it off with the question, like where is it that we need to be, and how do we start finding that balance? Like what are some of the recommendations? What are some of the things that people that are listening to today, they can kind of start analyzing themselves and be like, okay, what should I do in my life?
I think the place this starts, Rico, is proactivity. Okay, sounds overly simplified, but I think what our challenge is, right, and this isn't rocket science, we all have succumbed to this to a certain extent, is we just react. We just walk around from day to day reacting. We react to the way that we're treated by people. We react to what our business tells us that day. We react what our client experience is. It's just whack-a-mole. It's just this constant moving from target to target to target. And actually that subconscious behavior is so strong, because let's be honest, that is most of it. Okay. It's so strong that our businesses actually mirror that. That's why we need consultants and trainers and coaches and people on the third party perspective to help us guide our businesses. We've gotten so wrapped up in the reacting, we're not proactively thinking about our business. So
I love that.
I just think it starts with sitting down with yourself. Get away from the business, from the influence, from people. And I think this scares people, because when you get alone with your thoughts, you come across things that you don't like, right?
Dark.
It's
right. It gets dark quick.
There's
Right.
the reality of who you really are, right? It's the whole, you can lie to everybody, but you can't lie to yourself, right? Like 90% of our self-confidence comes from what our self believes about us, and has nothing to do with what the world believes us, right? But anyways, my point is I think it starts with leaders prioritizing, taking time and space to have introspective. Who am I? What do I want from my business? What do I want from my relationship? What is the kind of person I want to be seen as? Not because you want it to meet up with a standard that maybe Hollywood or the community puts on you, but what fulfills you personally. I think what happens, man, is that most of us, and I'm going to do this most of today, I'm going to be in this pocket for 10 seconds, right? But the reality of it is that most of us are subconsciously just delivering a result that marries up to what other things have told us to be. We just remain reactive.
Right.
But if I stop and say, and Chris and I have done this with our business, what do we want to be and get out of this? Now, based on that, I can start to spend some time thinking about the strategy, then the strengths, the focus, the skill sets, the partnerships, the friendships that I need to have in order for me to be equipped to do that thing, to be that person, that leader, that business. So I think it really just starts with wake the fuck up. Stop.
Right.
Stop hitting the things that pop up in front of you. Break out of that cycle just long enough to ask you your personal opinion on who you want to be and what do you want to be building. And I think once you start down that path, you begin to pull in the team, the resources, the things that you need then to be equipped to carry that out. Like, to me, that's the launching, really. Yeah. Right.
Here's another, it's just interesting. This is so timely, man. I'm so grateful for this conversation. I was watching a YouTube video for Alan Watts. I don't know if anybody here has heard that name before. He's a spiritual kind of philosopher guy, an iconic person. And he has this video that says, your purpose, the title is, Your Purpose is Not in the Future. And I think there's something really important here.
Yeah, is this the one where he gives the analogy of the dance floor? He's like, you don't start a dance with the with a predetermined destination on the dance floor. You just are there.
I
You're
don't
present, you're
remember
dancing.
that, but the premise,
yeah.
but that's good. Yeah. But the premise that he presents is, look, so often all of us, and I think this is especially true of entrepreneurs and business people, is all of our hope, like our source of joy, satisfaction, that stuff, it lies in the future. It's like we're always reaching towards this destination. Of course, the destination changes, but it's like we're never fully satisfied in the moment.
Yeah.
Everything is about tomorrow. Everything is about 5 years from now. It's empire building, right?
Yep.
And one of the things he talks about is how reminding us, we all know this, but we forget our mortality. We forget that, okay, but what if tomorrow is your last day?
Right.
My friend, I have a friend named John. Well, he's no longer with us, right? My buddy John, 2 years ago, he died. Somebody was texting and driving on a mountain road, head-on collision, killed him. Wife and his kids survived. He was 50 years old. My buddy, entrepreneur, all kinds of vision, was a shareholder in a technology company that he helped start. They were still kind of working their way up. Boom, in a second, right? Snatched away. That's just a reality that we all live with. It's part of the human experience, is that you may not get where you're going. So what about today?
Right.
Like I think there's something so powerful of saying, what kind of person in life do I want to have? And am I living into that now? Because if all of my thinking, all of my strategy, all my tactics are about tomorrow, what kind of life am I actually creating? I think that's what a lot of people realize, is everything's about tomorrow. Everything's about what I'm building, creating. I'm deferring certain things so that I can live like no one. Like it's the Dave Ramsey thing.
100%.
I'm going to live like no one else today, so I can live like no other tomorrow and be rich and have all the fun and everything else. And it's like, well, okay, all right, or maybe I should be thinking a little bit more about the life that I'm living and experiencing, creating right now, instead of deferring all of that. Like, what kind of person do I want to be? Well, how do I do the things today that are going to create a life that I want to experience and live today? Like, what kind of relationship do I want with my family? Am I going to put off until I have a $10 million business and I can sell it for 40 million, and then I'll have all the time with my family?
Right.
Well, yeah, dude, you may not get there.
Yep.
So then what? Was it all for naught? It actually was, because your family, they're going to have whatever money's left over, but you're gone.
Coffins don't have pockets, man. That's
Right?
just the way that it works.
It's over, you know?
It's done. Yeah, it's done. And it's, Alan Watts talks about, along those same lines, he goes, he talks about when you listen to music, and this, an amazing piece of music, you don't listen to it with the intent to get to the end of the song.
Right.
Like, that's not what you're doing.
Right.
The purpose of listening to, and of course, like, this is, not that many people listen to bodies of work anymore, right? Yeah. Which is kind of why I'm on a whole new vinyl kick now.
Don't get me started on that.
Yeah. But like, it's an interesting concept, right? And you're right. You don't listen to a piece of music with the objective to get to the end of the song. You're doing it to enjoy each and every single moment of it. And one of the interesting cliche things about that kind of way of thinking, though, and this is where I think a lot of people they give it superficial thought. And it's like, we talk about leadership, and we're talking about building a business, and we talk about all of these amazing things, and about how you want to show up for your employees, and how you want to show up for your partners, and this and that. And, there's a lot of self-help books that talk about, if this was the last day, like, what would you do? I don't think anybody would be like, I'm going to the office today.
Right. Yeah.
So, and again, I think if on a very superficial level, you'd be like, you know what, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be this great guy. I'm going to give everybody a high five and do all of these things. And that might be a small moment. But I think that once you weigh that out with everything else that you would actually do with your life, like, what would that response look like? And then all of a sudden, getting that $10 million to $40 million company, does that hold the same amount of weight? Or is a $2 million company that offers you much more flexibility, less headache, less stress, less possibility of, having a heart attack or something like that, is sometimes that a better solution? So you guys are in a very unique position, because you speak to a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs. When you're digging deeper, what's the divide there? I mean, are most people saying go bigger? Are most people saying, wait a second, let's be much more strategic about what, if not shrinking, at least how I can maintain, but remove myself as much from the business? Usually, what are you guys experiencing on that end?
I feel like there's kind of default two pockets. Now, and of course, there's a myriad of versions of it, but I think there's two pockets. There's the individual that is fed up. They're just burnt the hell out.
Mhm.
They have, through sheer will and grit and intestinal fortitude, have pulled this thing out of the dirt and to some extent micromanage that damn thing to some level of success, right?
Mhm.
And I know that micromanagement, like many people hear that and they're like, not me, I don't do that. Well, if you don't have any systems, processes, delegation standards, right, it just looks weird, right? But it's
Right.
still some version of broken micromanagement. Anyways, my point is, I think people are there often, and they just don't know what to do to reshape the business so that it feels more like they own a company instead of being self-employed. Okay, so
Mm.
that's one camp. I think the other camp that we get into is that people want to take their business to the next level. There is something in them that's fired up. Maybe it's a midlife thing. Like, I've been doing this for umpteen years and never made it beyond this point, and I know I can do better. Like, I'm sick of only hitting up against this wall. I believe I can do something different. I'm going to go out and invest to help me. So I think if we just kind of overly summarize, I think those are the two camps. My perspective on it, though, is that I feel like they still need the same thing. And what they need is a switch in their leadership persona, their skill set, their competency on how they get people to move from here to there, right? Because if you're a broken business that feels like everything's done based on your shoulders, your give a shit, your integrity, all those things, we're not building people. If your business has been fairly healthy, it got to a certain level, and now it can't increase beyond that perspective or that point, it's because we have to learn how to invest and change our leadership behavior with people. And so I think it ends up pointing us to the same space, is that this entrepreneur, this business owner, needs to determine or develop a skill set that allows them to build a trusted relationship with people and allow those people to help them generate the lift, whether it be correcting the business or pushing beyond this stuck point that you've been in terms of scale, revenue generation or whatever. I think that's the oversimplification.
Where does
I agree.
self-care come in on this? Self-care.
Yeah.
So expand on that. Go ahead and expand on that, but then follow it up with, where does self-care come in on this? Because again, as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you guys have probably felt this the exact same way. It comes in seasons where you're working and working and working and grinding and trying to figure it out. And in a lot of ways, you kind of neglect yourself, right? Maybe it's a hobby, maybe it's eating habits, maybe it's working out, whatever the case may be. Maybe it's, a sport that you really used to enjoy. Where does that fit into this to help consolidate this midlife thing that happens so that you're not forgetting about yourself?
Well, okay, so going back to this whole thing Brandon's talking about, where there are certain points in the business where you realize, what got us here isn't going to get us there, right? We've all heard that phrase. Rachel Stewart, actually, she told us a story. We were in a conversation, it might have been on one of our podcasts with her, where she was referencing a technology CEO that she knows down in Phoenix area.
Mm-hmm.
And he was just remarking on the fact that, particularly with a scaled technology company, grows really fast and the business changes really substantially from kind of season to season. And this guy remarked that, any business, the executive, the owner, the CEO can really only lead through typically 2 growth cycles before they kind of top out, where their skill set is no longer relevant to tackle another growth cycle. And it requires a different profile of leader as you grow from, say, a 0 to, and we can all see those people in restoration. You can all think back, those of you that have, may say, 50 employees now, and at one point you had 4, right? There's these moments where it's like the skills required to lead and run that business change fundamentally. And one of the other things that Brandon and I talk about relative to that is, I think a leader can't lead others where they haven't yet gone themselves. So there's this self-leadership component, I think, that is something we need to give attention to as a leader. Of where am I at? What's going on inside my head? What are some of the self-limiting beliefs, right? Like you mentioned earlier. What are some of my default beliefs, my instincts, my knee-jerk reactions? I need to know and understand myself. And I think self-care is a part of that. So for example, I think a lot of that early grind mentality of, I'm working 100-hour weeks, that's just the stage of life I'm in with the business. I got a nose to the grindstone. I think a lot of that's self-deception, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of that's cultural. I think one of the things that every leader that's listening to this knows, that's gone through that startup phase, when they look back, they look at how much they spun their wheels and how much time they wasted grinding their ass off, getting the business off the ground. The reality, and Brandon and I've talked about this, and I'm sure it's been a topic for you too, is look, if we're all honest with ourselves, all of us have different capacities. God, we have this one owner that is just,
I think 100 hours might be totally reasonable.
The guy's a freaking 20-hour a day guy. He's like a Jocko Willink, only needs like 5 hours. So there are those people, but if we're honest with ourselves, right, most of us we have our golden hours that we're effective. What is it? I think some people it's 4 hours a day. Some people it's 8 or 10. But there is a finite period of time where I'm effective in actually creating and doing and executing and implementing on things. Let's just be honest, right? And so I think as we start to get more honest with ourselves about what we have to offer, what our internal capacity is, what our natural skill set and all that kind of stuff is then we can start to be more honest about what I need, how do I need to structure my day. And I think too, as we become more honest with ourselves as leaders, again, it points us toward our people and considering what's our people's capacity and how do I create an environment where people are also taking care of themselves and we don't have this constant cycle of burnout and frustration and drama within the team. I think a lot of that starts to stabilize when the leader themselves starts to do a better job of looking internally, reflecting, what do I need, taking better care of themselves as a leader. So I think it starts with us just acknowledging as leaders, if I have to be the tip of the spear, I have to be the one that goes out in front. And as we're growing as a company, I have to first look at myself and say, okay, what is going to be required of me as a leader for us to get to this next phase? Where do I need to grow, adapt, change things up, invest in myself, care for myself better in order to help lead the company where we're trying to go? Like, I don't think there's a workaround for that. I mean, I guess there's an example if somebody's got the cash that they can just buy that leadership, that absentee owner. It's certainly an option. But then, of course, you have to consider what kind of general manager, what kind of CEO am I putting in place, and do they have that self-awareness? Are they pursuing that self-leadership so that then ultimately they can take the team where the team needs to go? I think that's something we don't spend enough time on.
I think another way to kind of think about this is here's a personal story that's very recent, and this is real simple. This isn't even as heady. I think Chris is spot on, and I think
you telling me I'm heady? Am I navel gazing?
I think for some of us, like we hear that perspective though, and we're like, oh my gosh, that's light year in terms of skill set and practice from now. But so like, here's a recent thing. Those of you that have ever heard our show or seen anything that Chris and I do, it's pretty obvious that Chris is not overweight. Okay. He's very intentional about how he takes care of himself physically. Since we've been business partners, I've prioritized that better. I've had phases. I have a military background. There was phases where I was kicking ass and taking names. And there's other phases where I pushed it off, using the same excuse that most entrepreneurs and Americans are, is I'm doing this thing. I don't have time to prioritize. Let me just give you an example of what I ran into. Our business is essentially doubling in size this year. We're adding amazing employees, and we've been very fortunate. The new team members that we've added this year have literally changed the shape of our company, added so much new flavor and competency. We are succeeding, and I am so thankful for it. We are adapting, learning. We have really special relationships with like somebody like you in our industry, where it's like, no, we honor and respect each other. Like, these are good friendships in the industry.
100%.
Those are all fantastic things, right? But I have slipped since our last road trip together, because we've been here locally at home now for almost 5 or 6 weeks, which is very abnormal for us. And I slipped. I got out of my workout routine. And this is how real this is. Professionally, I have all these great things going on. But you know what the message myself is hearing on a consistent basis, even if it's not me saying it, it's, you didn't work out Monday. You didn't work out Tuesday. You didn't work out Thursday. And then the next week rolls around. You didn't work out. You didn't work out. You didn't work out. And why is that important? Because that's the hard thing I need to do for myself that no one else sees, right? There's no one else that's accountable. And so I this is like an Ed Milet saying. It's like self-confidence comes from what yourself believes about yourself. And every fucking time I don't get up and I don't go and work out, I'm re-cementing to myself that I don't do what I say I'm going to do for myself. As soon as 2 days in, 2-3 days in, my wife and I, and we're a good partnership, and we're like, hey, let's get our shit together. You and I can tackle anything we want to tackle. Let's make this a priority. Let's get back on track. 2-3 days into getting back on track, my whole self-esteem takes on a whole new shape. 3 days.
Show up better.
Show up better, dude. I've got the energy to do these things. Now, were there times where I cut out of the office at 5:30 because I'm like, I got to get the fuck home and get my workout in? I did, and there's plenty of things that I can point to that makes me look like I'm weak or I punched out or whatever. But the way I show up the next day because I went home and fulfilled a promise to myself makes me more powerful in every other category that I give to anybody else in our work, preparing for the collective at the end of the month. Like, I'm going to be better because myself believes me, not because Rico or Chris believe me. It's because myself does. And so I think your self-care thing is we have to build trust with ourselves before we attempt to build any kind of trust with other people, because all of that will fall dead, because as soon as they're not in front of me and I start talking to myself's like, yeah, dude, you can't even fill this promise. You can't even show up and work out when you tell me you're going to work out. Right. Like I think that's a thing that has become overwhelmingly relevant to me right now. And maybe it is a midlife thing. I don't know. I just know that that's truth for me. And the more I invest in that, the more reality I get to experience of self-confidence. Now I got a long ways to, I have a rough time giving myself freedom. But
that's good, dude.
That's a self-help.
Really good.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Just you do show up in a totally different light, even for yourself. So my favorite time, the days that I feel my absolute best are the days where I'm out of the house 3:30, 4:30 in the morning, somewhere in that pocket. No one's out on the road. I'm going to my gym, doing my cold plunge first thing in the morning, getting my workout in, and also very leisurely, right? Because now I'm not stressed. Like, everybody else is sleeping. The world, for the most part, is sleeping, and got the gym all to myself, hanging out. By the time that I'm done, that I go back out to my car, I'm ready to get my day started. I look around and I'm like, it's a psychological thing, because you see all these people that are rushing now. They're going to get their coffee. They're, dropping the kids off, whatever the case may be. And just for that split moment, you're like, man, I got one up on everybody here. And even though that may not be the case, because there are definitely people that are crushing it, maybe a lot more than you, but just psychologically, especially I think as a male, like, you just feel like, okay, I've already kind of won the day for myself. I did the hard thing first. I got it going. And so just finding that nice groove for yourself, also holding yourself accountable. And we all slip, again, you don't go work out for a couple of weeks, but then you're right, it plagues you. It's like that one thing, you're like, man, I didn't do it. I told myself I was going to do it, and you buy that excuse. So what I've been doing as a practice, because I will cut out on a lot of that stuff as well, is just show up. Just show up. Just the goal is, I don't feel like working out. I don't feel like doing any of this stuff. Let me just go to the gym and park my car in the parking lot. Yeah. And then usually that'll be like, oh,
right.
All right. Well, I'm already here. Let me just, let me just go on the floor, and I'll give myself outs. Like, I will give myself outs. And there's been days where I've shown up at the gym and literally been there 15, 20 minutes, picked up a set of dumbbells, did a couple curls. I'm like, I'm definitely not feeling it, but at least I showed up. And it's like, I don't want to make it unbearable either, but totally. Having some degree of accountability, I think is amazing. Before we wrap up, let's, for the salespeople out there, because you guys are extremely respected when it comes down to your selling ability and training, these amazing salespeople. How does this psychologically affect salespeople and their approach to business development in the restoration arena? And more importantly, how do you think the relationships with potential projects, facilities managers, and things like that change by you having this, start asking these style of questions, and how you're potentially showing up?
Yeah. Well, I talk a lot about in our sales conversations we have with people about how, historically, I think people have a view of sales where it's dog and pony show. It's a crafted presentation. We have our our bullet points that we go over. We have our sales collateral that talks about how awesome we are. We talk about our scope of work, all the different things we can do. It's like, opening up your code on, Fifth Avenue in New York. Like, hey, you looking for a watch? Oh, so, how about sunglasses?
As long as you're talking about watches, I wasn't sure
Right?
what was under the code.
Yeah, right. For a split second, I was like, what is he talking about?
Where are we going here?
They got all things on offer in New York, but so right. But that's kind of traditionally how we view sales. Is it's this razzmatazz, it's charisma, it's all these things we're wooing and we're persuading. And I think one of the things that we've started introducing into that sales conversation in our industry is it's really actually about just getting to the truth.
Mm-hmm.
It's understanding the truth of what our prospects' experience has been with our industry, with other vendors, how it affects their business, what kinds of stressors, damage events and environmental issues bring to their team. How does it affect their ability to do their business? When they have a damage event that's in process, all that kind of stuff. It's just understanding the truth about how they make decisions in their business, understanding the truth about past experiences, unmet preferences, all that kind of stuff. And then it's all about me just communicating the truth about how potentially we can meet them in that deficiency, right?
Mm-hmm.
If they've had a theme of communication issues with their past restoration company, whatever, then my response as a sales leader is simply to communicate the truth of how a system or a personality on our team solves for that deficiency or pain or whatever, however you want to think about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think, frankly, the whole industry of selling would benefit from that mindset shift. That it's less about the razzmatazz and the promotional selling and the, hey, look at all the cool things we can do for you and our product can do, and instead just understanding our customer, indexing higher on how do I understand my customer's reality? And then if I spot an opportunity for me to improve their reality, right, then just communicating the truth of where our company is at. Because of course, that's another thing that we typically do a really horrible job of in our industry is just salespeople are out there selling aspirationally. They're selling off the values on our wall, quality, punctuality, timeliness, and all these things that we value in our industry. But then on the service side, we haven't necessarily built the systems or hired the team or put the effort into delivering on that same standard. So there's an air gap, right, between what the salespeople are selling and often what we're delivering. And so again, it's just all about us. How do we orient on the truth? How do we just tell ourselves the truth? Like, so how do you do that functionally? Here's just a very simple exercise that people can do to say, okay, how aligned are we in terms of what our salespeople are selling and what we're delivering? What's the truth in our business? There's this very simple exercise we'll take teams through live sometimes. It's called the pain solution table. And it's just a T table, right? It's what are the common pain points that we know about our industry? Where do we fall down? Where do customers get disappointed? Where do they get pissed off and frustrated? Commercial or residential, doesn't really matter. You just start to create this list. Communication. Well, what do we mean by communication? Is it shitty communication because we're using poor grammar and we don't communicate well in emails? Or is it we're not communicating enough? So first of all, just getting clear. What's the truth? What when somebody says, the communication was shitty, well, what do they mean? Which one is it? And just listing all of those things. The appearance of technicians, technicians' behavior, vaping outside of somebody's, kitchen door, right? All of these pain points that customers experience. And then on the other side of things, thinking critically, concretely, what about our process, our policies, and our people in our business address that pain point, and drawing a very clear line between those two
Not
things.
Core values on the wall.
Yeah, not, hey, look,
Right.
core value, like what communication is one of our core values. Well, nobody gives a fuck. They want to know what do you do in your business? Is there a system? Is there something concrete we can point at? And so just like just a simple example, right? When somebody has an issue with communication, a concrete and specific example would be, well, can I tell you about our 24-hour job update template that all of our PMs use? Okay. Well, so, every single day, at the end of the day, one of our expectations of all of our PMs, right, is that we have a Gmail template that's saved inside all of their Gmail accounts, and they are expected to send this formatted 24-hour job update to all of their active files. Simple. And we even we can joke about it. If I'm talking to a property manager, I'm explaining this. I'm like, look, and how much do our guys love to have to send another email at the end of the day? I don't know how much your people love filling out their reports and all this stuff. Well, of course, it's one more thing that our people have to do. But what you described, your experience with XYZ restoration, never knowing what the hell's going on. Well, this is how we solve for it. It's the best solution we found to try to reduce the question marks and make sure people feel like they're getting communicated enough to. And so our people do it. We spend the time, effort, and energy on it because it's the only way we can solve for that problem you've had with your other restoration company these last several projects. It's specific. Your reality, you've gotten shitty communication. It's been frustrating, creates drama, creates stress on the property management team. Okay, well, here's our solution for it. It's simple. It's not sexy. This is what we do. And right, it's concrete and it's specific. I've
got a counter. I'm
Yeah.
on the softer side. So, okay. So here's maybe a softer, less tactical response to that is, I think just like with leadership in general, selling, leadership, whatever the role may be, there is something really rewarding about winning because someone else is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if we kind of think about like the cool stuff, the other parts of the conversation that we've had, this reference to kind of this midlife rethinking, being proactive, I think there's something in terms of our selling mechanism. Like winners in sales want to win. Like they want to see numbers and they want to see paychecks. Let's not I don't want to turn it into something it's not, right? But when okay, just like leadership, we can go to our businesses and win, and we want to do that. And that looks like better EBITDA. That looks like better, all the things. In sales, I think there's this opportunity that when that facility engineer is getting recognized by their leadership for kicking ass, and and they know that part of the reason they do that is because of the way your team responds to their needs and their losses, i.e. the way you give them communication that they can just forward that covers all the bases, whatever, right? You make them look like a superhero, you're going to win, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that Chris is just right out of the gate has been very aggressive about teaching is a peer partnership relationship to our people we're selling. And again, let's not make this into some woo-woo thing. It's just that engineers, for instance, don't want to talk to a salesperson, but they'd be more than happy to have a viable relationship with a partner that can actually help them win in their business, right? And so I think what we're talking about is this re-engagement and reprioritization of the relationship, and then why am I pursuing that relationship? And if in a sales environment, you get really good at providing solutions that make your clients look like heroes, you're going to fucking make so much money, it's going to be hard to spend it. Like, let's just be honest, right?
It's true.
Because they're buying what's in it for them. They don't give two shits about our brand, what things look like, or how many cars that we have in the fleet. But if you make them an easy, win, they'll buck their own system. Like, if you're part of a giant property management firm that's got national contracts with all the big players, but you locally know that every time you call in Rico's company, Rico literally just makes you look like you're walking on water. There's no way in hell they will do anything other than get you in on their work, because there's no way they're compromising their title or reputation for any other reason, right? Like, self-motivation is the most important. Peer partnerships, understanding the value of a relationship and why you're doing what you do for that person. Oh gosh, dude, it's a game changer.
It's all about what's real. And that's what we've been talking about, right? It's like getting real. It's getting real with yourself. And I think it's getting real as a company and saying, hey, we love to talk a big game. We're awesome. We're the best. We got this, we got that. And it's like, well, yeah, but how good are you at addressing the actual challenges, problems, issues, irritations that your customers are real for your customer?
And even your employees in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Again, there's tons
100%.
of organizations, tons of organizations. They're big, they're large, they're powerful. But their internals, they're broken. They're broken. The SOP doesn't exist. They don't really have a great chain of command. Like, it happens and things break. And when things break, then you can't really deliver to your end consumer as well. Real briefly, before you guys roll off, because I appreciate you spending the time here with us today, talk to us about the course that you guys have available. There will be a link in the video description as well as in the show notes below. But what is some of the material that you guys cover on the digital course? And again, what can a company expect? Maybe they're listening to this conversation, but like, you know what? I need a lot of this stuff. I need to really think through not only my processes, maybe some of my own personal stuff, and then talk to us about like what the consulting aspect looks like as well, and how those two differ.
Sure.
So how about I lead? I'll talk about the sales master course, and Brandon can wrap up on the consulting piece. So on the sales master course, I think the feedback we've gotten from clients is it's been powerful on a couple levels. One is that in terms of preparing somebody to kind of have all of the necessary knowledge and sort of the frame for what is commercial sales, how do we go about it, what kind of activities do we do every week, and then who are we selling to? the master course is really, it's a complete primer for commercial sales. And so the education piece is there, and on that piece, the most common feedback we get is people love the interplay between Brandon and I. You're already seeing it. Listeners can already hear the difference. Brandon and I have some just contrasting one experience. Brandon's come up almost entirely on the leadership and operations side, and we bring that into the commercial sales master course. So there's this interplay between the operations realities of commercial selling and then the role of the sales leader, and also how do we maximize that interplay. So it's very holistic, the master course. So if you sick your salesperson on it, they're not only going to come away with how did we do commercial sales, how do we sell, how do we connect, how do we do this pain solution selling kind of model, but then there's also this education on how do we manage the relationship between our operations team and us as the sales leader that's bringing the business in. So there's that piece. And then the second value that I think business owners see in it is that it's a turnkey onboarding tool. It's like, it's a complete primer, right, that gets everybody speaking the same language on your sales team. A lot of our clients too are starting to have their operational leaders go through the sales master course. So they have a more strategic, complete view of how sales fits into the overall operation, because in a healthy service business, everyone's in sales, right? We all say that, but how much do we actually invest the time, effort, and energy to expand kind of our knowledge of the other areas of the business? So we're seeing that a lot now. Because our one-on-one consulting clients, they get the access to the master course across their team free of charge, of course. So that's just one of the perks. And more, we're seeing them having all of their department leaders, in some cases down into their project management staff, to take this master course so that they can be more effective from a sales and relationship standpoint with the commercial operational contacts and relationships they're developing, to have that kind of knowledge of the relationship, asking good, curious questions, right? All of that stuff that they've got those tools in their tool belt for when they're engaging with those customers on a service delivery standpoint. So those are kind of the two benefits. Is it's a great training tool to help transition a team that's maybe largely been agents and property managers to this more commercial direct focus. But then, subsequently, as they grow their team, it's like every salesperson that comes in starts there. So the whole team is speaking the same language and moving in the same direction.
I love it.
The consulting side's interesting, man. It's like I think that for us personally, the whole reason we even got into consulting is that we had some special relationships as we were building teams and acting, executing in the trenches. And those relationships really helped us see our businesses from different perspectives. They help round out like the glimpse that we have of what we're doing. They, like today's conversation, they help wake us up to these kind of like mind blocks or these zombie modes that we get in where we miss things around us that are critical, that help reshape what we can experience. And so our love of that, our respect for that experience made us say, well, why would we not continue to do that now that we have the level of experience that we have, and we can marry that up with this real life experience that we had where our businesses and professional lives were reshaped by having a partner like that with us? Why, what else would be an awesome way for us to develop a company and leave a legacy is to do the same thing. And so really there's kind of like this profile for our business. As a consulting agency, we are your battle buddy. So we're building a team of senior consultants that all come from this industry. They eat, sleep, and breathe what you do. They know your pain at a gut level. They know it at an emotional level. Like when you say I'm going through X, my consultant can immediately get drawn back to a moment where they were feeling exactly what you were feeling. They know your struggle, and they partner up alongside of you, and they deliver two critical. The first one is they give you the ability to empower your people to come into an alignment with a strategy that will help you and your business win. And then they drive accountability. That's like, if we were to oversimplify everything, we help you establish a strategy that will win. We empower your people to get into alignment.
Teaching and training.
And then it's all about accountability. March, make progress, move the needle. Don't allow excuses to slow you down. And we all know what that means. Like I can give up on myself easier than I can if I know I got to get on this call with Rico at 2:00 this afternoon, and I've got to have an answer for this guy. Like, he's gonna ask me where I'm at. And the ability that we give, us giving that to business owners helps change their business. It's that easy.
One of the practical bits too, so if you added a third element to it, is analysis. And this is actually something newer that has been an update in kind of our system, is we now have a business health audit that we do with every single one of our clients. The very first thing we do, and we've built an algorithm into it. Shout out to Scott Masuro, one of our senior consultants, that he actually helped devise this and create it. We now have this business health audit that it has an algorithm behind it, assigning point values and weight and so forth to different areas of the business. Once we get through this, I think it's like a 104-point, questionnaire audit that we do with a company. It establishes a baseline. And this is one of the things where a lot of time of coaching and consulting falls flat, is that especially in business, there's so many things that you don't see a result for 3 or 6 months. It's hard to know when you're making progress. But now with this accountability tool that we start with, we have a beginning, we have a starting point, a baseline actually gives them a score, a health score for their business. And then we can periodically check in and say, okay, as we start to fill those air gaps, right, in their processes or some of the leadership behaviors that weren't present when we started, now that we've put those things in place and filled those gaps, it's easy for them to see, oh my gosh, right, here's where we were, here's where we are now. And like Brandon said, it's just, we analyze it, we see where we're at, establish ourselves, right? Then we equip them, and that's that training and facilitation and modeling and that kind of stuff. And then it's all about the accountability. So I think that's great.
That's awesome, guys. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave links in the video description as well as in the show notes. So anybody out there, all those dominators want to go ahead and reach out, take their business to the next level, really make sure that they're maximizing their time here on earth, if you will, not only just becoming a better entrepreneur, but just having a better and healthier business. Definitely make sure that you check them out. And then I'm also going to leave the link to their podcast. If you haven't checked out their podcast, their show, show them some love. Go ahead and leave a review and subscribe and do all that good jazz that helps the algorithm and fellow podcaster out. Outside of that, guys, thank you so much for joining me today and spending some time with all these dominators out there. And as always, hustle, hack, dominate. I'll catch you guys on the next one.
You've been listening to Restoration Domination, your #1 resource for tips, tricks, and hacks to help your business grow. Subscribe to our channel and follow us for more Restoration Domination. And follow our host at Rico Garcia Jr. on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Till next time, this is Restoration Domination. Hustle, hack, dominate.